Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. The topic for today's webinar is Introduction to NREL's State and Local Planning for Energy Slope Platform. This webinar is being presented by the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA. We have with us on the line our host for today's webinar, Nate Hausman. Nate's a project director here at CESA, and we also have Megan Day from NREL. Before I pass it over to them, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping notes. All of our attendees for this webinar are in listen-only mode. That means that hopefully you can hear us, but we can't hear you. You have a couple of options to join the audio portion of the webinar. You can call in via telephone, or you can connect via your computer, mic, and speakers. If you'd like to minimize the webinar console so that you can view the presentation full screen, you can click on the orange arrow that you see circled there. You can also click on that arrow to expand the webinar console. And some of the things that you might like to do with that webinar console are submit questions. We would love to hear from you. We're going to save about 15-20 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A with the audience. We have a lot of people registered for the webinar. We still should be able to get to plenty of questions. So type your questions in when you think of them. Don't wait until the end, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Finally, this webinar is being recorded. We will send you an email with a copy of the webinar recording within about 48 hours, and we'll also post that recording and a PDF of the slides on our website at cesa.org/webinars. So with that, I am now going to pass it over to our host for today's webinar, Nate Hausman. As I said, Nate is a project director here at the Clean Energy States Alliance, and he is going to get us started.
Great, thank you, Samantha. Yes, first, just a quick note about the Clean Energy States Alliance, or CESA. We are a national nonprofit coalition of public agencies and organizations. We work together to advance clean energy. We're mostly comprised of state-level agencies, and you can see our many members on this slide. So as Samantha said, this webinar is on a National Renewable Energy Lab tool that supports state clean energy planning. The tool is called State and Local Planning for Energy, or SLOPE. And with us today to show us that tool and share about its functionality is Megan Day. So I'll introduce Megan and then let her take it away. Megan is a senior energy planner at the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, where she serves as the lab's subject matter expert on state and local energy planning and large-scale solar development. She led the development of city energy profiles for more than 23,400 US cities through the Cities Leading Through Energy Analysis and Planning Cities LEAP project, with data available on state and local energy data site. She's also, of course, currently leading the development of the SLOPE platform, which is what she's going to talk to us today about. And she's a certified urban and regional planner with a background in climate action planning and emissions inventorying and utility scale solar development. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Megan. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Nate. I am thrilled to be with you guys today and to share some background and how to use the SLOPE platform, and also hear your feedback and questions. So I am hoping that you can see my screen okay now.
We sure can.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so as Nate said, I work for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and a lot of the CESA members may be familiar with this building here, which is on the NREL campus, because they had their annual meeting here. We were happy to host them in the days of in-person meetings. Yes. So NREL is one of 17 national laboratories within the Department of Energy's system. We are the only national lab that focuses exclusively on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable transportation. And that's why the SLOPE platform is pretty exciting for us, because we get to combine in a comprehensive way all of those technologies and approaches to clean energy transition. As you can see, our motto is transforming energy. And that's what we're trying to support among our state and local audience. So I have the fun job of basically trying to develop and apply the research and technology and analysis going on at the lab to a state and local decision-making audience. So I'm really glad to be talking to that audience today. Thanks for having me. And I'm really looking forward to your questions as to how we can make our tools and data more applicable to your work. So as Nate said, today I'll be focusing on the State and Local Planning for Energy, or SLOPE platform. This is a new platform developed as a collaboration between 8 Department of Energy technology offices. So it's pretty unique. This is all supported by the Department of Energy and their Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Within that office, there are 8 offices that are coming together to support the platform of SLOPE and deliver data and tools and information to help state and local planning for energy. And that includes the Weatherization and Intergovernmental Programs Office, which is leading the charge here. We also have generous support from the Solar, Wind, Geothermal, Water Power, Vehicles, and Strategic Programs offices within the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. So we're really excited for this pretty unprecedented level of collaboration to deliver this information to you. So SLOPE is a tool to enable more data-driven state and local energy planning by delivering dozens of distinct sources of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and coming soon, sustainable transportation to a state and local audience. Our goal is to make this a really easy to access, zero barrier to entry online platform to illustrate clean energy opportunities and potential at the state and local level. So here we go. We are now in the SLOPE beta stage, right? So we just launched in January of 2020. And these are the data sets that we have so far. And you may be thinking, ho-hum, that's not really quite what I need, but I'm really excited to be building a user base for SLOPE with you today because there is much more to come. As I mentioned, we're integrating sustainable transportation as one of those components, and I will go through all of the list of new components that we will be adding at the end of this calendar year. And even after that, we'll be working to integrate more scenario planning capabilities, right? So we'll get to the kind of SLOPE direction in just a bit. But let's dive in to SLOPE, and I'll try to tell a story here. I'm going to focus on the state of New Mexico, and I'll be switching back and forth to the actual site to kind of help give you a feel of how it works and some functionality that might be helpful. But here I've pulled together some of the information on consumption, right? That's one of the entry points of the SLOPE platform, is we've modeled electricity and natural gas consumption by sector for every state and county, and we have it for cities, and we'll be delivering that at the end of this calendar year. So we're going to be adding that city level data, whereas right now you can see we have county and state data availability on SLOPE. Really excited to add that city level when we have that at the end of the year and where we have that available. So some data sets are not available at all the different geospatial levels, but we deliver it where they are available. So here for the state of New Mexico, as in your Clean Energy Collaborative, right, you have a lot of states in your group that have very ambitious renewable energy, clean energy transition goals. That's what we're here to support. So looking forward to your feedback on how we can better do that. But here's where we are right now. New Mexico obviously has a clean energy goal. One of the things we deliver is this breakout in modeled energy consumption from natural gas and electricity by sector. So this is not actual, measured, and historical. As you can see, it's projected through 2050. This right now is a business as usual case, right? So we have in the state of New Mexico, we're breaking down energy consumption by sector. We've got modeled electricity and natural gas in the residential sector here in yellow and orange, commercial sector in red, and industrial sector in purple. So here we can tell right off the bat that, okay, there's a pretty even split between sectors in New Mexico. That's not the case across the states. So for example, Indiana and other sort of more industrial states have a much higher industrial consumption here. So if you go to a per capita normalization, it might be a little skewed because that's predominantly industrial consumption that you're attributing to households, which might be a little misleading. So here in New Mexico, we have pretty even consumption across electricity, natural gas, and each residential, commercial, and industrial sector. What we can do is then take that to a county level view. So here we're looking at the state of New Mexico and a county level view of total consumption, right? We're a little off here, sorry. Looking over on the right. And you can see that basically around the cities, you have higher total consumption, right? So you can see where that breaks out across the state. All right. We also have modeled energy efficiency potential by sector. So if I'm the state of New Mexico, I want to know, all right, how do I achieve this clean energy goal? And many folks look at efficiency as the first kind of step toward that goal. How can we reduce consumption such that we can meet that remaining consumption with clean energy resources? So here we've mapped out the potential by sector for efficiency, right? This is based on an EPRI study. And we're looking at, again, projections over time from a baseline. And in New Mexico, what we're seeing here is we have the highest efficiency in gigawatt hours savings potential from the commercial sector, right? The width of this band is the level of incentive impact from $0 per megawatt hour to $20 per megawatt hour. So we can see that the residential sector here in orange is more impacted by incentives than the commercial sector. However, there's higher energy savings potential in the commercial sector. So we have two data sets available. There's high achievable potential and there's economic potential in the actual slope site. Economic potential is basically if everybody did everything that's economic, and what would your efficiency savings be? High achievable potential is more based on historic rates of energy efficiency achieved savings. So it's a more realistic kind of upper bound of your potential to save electricity in this case. So here we have some of your potential by sector. Next, we might want to look at, okay, we gotta keep going here, okay. We've integrated data from the NREL ResStock model, which is a really amazing study based on supercomputing analysis of 350,000 different types of single-family homes, right? Different siding, different roofing, different number of bedrooms and level floors, et cetera, different heating types and fuel types. So what we've done here is we've taken that data and we've looked at the housing stock in each state and what are the highest energy savings measures that are cost effective. We're not showing anything that does not have a net present value. So here for electricity, we're seeing, based on the ResStock data for New Mexico, that across the state, total electricity savings potential in gigawatt hours, that LED lighting is still the highest here, energy efficiency potential. And that's followed by drill and fill wall insulation, attic insulation. This is a central AC sort of upgrade, smart thermostats, duct sealing, storm windows, do-it-yourself, air sealing, and there's, so that's on the electricity side. And you can go to the actual source data here, and that's linked through slope for everything. So some people are like, where do you get all this data? How do you know these things? What assumptions are you making? Which is, of course, a very good question. What we're trying to do is create a zero barrier to entry, compelling visuals that you can just take screenshots of and use in your reports, presentations, whatever way it helps you, and but also source back to all of the research that goes into this so that you can dig as deep as you want and find a lot of the nuance and the assumptions that go into these models. So let's look at, we also deliver single family home fuel savings potential. Last week we were looking at electricity. This is fuel savings. And so in New Mexico, we've modeled in single family homes, drill and fill wall insulation has the highest energy savings potential, TBTU, followed by smart thermostats, attic, duct sealing, etc. I want to point out here that heat pumps do come up in this, and that is based on, again, net present value. So we're not showing anything that does not have a positive net present value. And here we're looking at replacing propane furnaces with variable speed heat pumps. So that's where it's coming up for New Mexico. And so that's obviously, propane is more expensive, so it makes that a much more affordable and cost-effective intervention on the efficiency side right now. Sometimes it'll say at wear out. This one does not. This is another way of looking at the energy efficiency potential from the RESDOC data in single family homes again. And it's not on the slope site, but I like to show this because I've been told this chart makes no sense to me, and I was not allowed to put it on the slope site. It takes a little explanation. It's just a different way of looking at what I've just shown you. And I like it because it's showing you the savings, the cost savings potential, right, on the y-axis here. But across the x-axis, this is basically the total savings across the state. So here, if you look at, it's a percentage of consumption by the state's single-family homes. This is detached. So we're looking at a percentage of consumption. So here, the largest block here of percentage of savings is upgrading electric furnaces to variable speed heat pumps at wear out. So again, you're having heat pumps come up, even in which can be some cold temperatures in New Mexico. And that you'll see that across the country. So it's a different way of looking at those measures and how they stack up. All right, so that's energy efficiency potential on slope. Let's move into renewable energy potential. So again, we're trying to help folks understand what is your potential for efficiency, for renewables, and soon for sustainable transportation. And here we've got a lot of data that we are delivering at the state and county level on renewable energy potential. And this is a function on slope. So I don't want to lose you to the slope site just yet, but I think we'll get there and you can sort of explore it along with me in just a bit. So here we're looking at land-based wind as a technology and the potential in the state of New Mexico. As you can see, land-based wind, New Mexico is among the highest echelon of, in this Coral Plus map, for land-based wind generation potential in the country. And what we've done here is we've tried to shift away from resource potential, where we deliver a lot of information, right? And that would mean, what is your wind class? What is your solar watts per meter squared insolation? What is your basically your resource? What we've done here is shift toward a generation potential. So this is a technical generation potential, and it layers in both that resource plus basically the feasibility of development. So we've removed urbanized areas from solar and wind development, large scale. We've removed steep slopes, water bodies that you can't build on, and other parks and preserved areas, so that we're not taking into consideration development where it just is not going to be feasible. It's not an economic potential where it would be cost effective necessarily, but as we can see in just a bit, the cost of wind and solar are coming down so much that often this is very cost effective development. So here we've got in megawatt hours the sort of range of wind, land-based wind generation potential across the country, and New Mexico is in the highest group. Then we can take a look at the county level. If you click on county, you can see in New Mexico where this wind generation potential is across the state. And you can see that, of course, we've got some counties with lower potential, but it is pretty uniform across the state. You've got very good wind generation potential in the state of New Mexico, which I wasn't quite aware of. So that's interesting to see. When you pull up renewable energy generation potential in SLOPE, you will see all of the different potentials that we map out here and measure, especially at the state level. We've got a lot more technologies mapped at the state level. Here I'm just showing the 3 that we have mapped also at the county level. And you'll see that concentrating solar is the highest technical generation potential in the state of New Mexico, which makes you wonder, why isn't there that much concentrating solar developed? Followed by utility scale PV, which is often the largest or the second largest, and land-based wind. So let's go to see why that might be. And okay. One of the things that I think is a fairly new feature delivered for this kind of audience is the levelized cost of energy, or LCOE. We have it modeled for every state and every county in the US. And so here we can see in New Mexico, the state of New Mexico, we've got modeled and projected ranges for different technologies through 2050. And this brown band here is concentrating solar. So you can see that it is currently among the highest cost technologies. That's why we're not seeing it being deployed in New Mexico or much of anywhere else. It's pretty low deployment right now, pretty much eclipsed by wind and solar, or PV, I should say. Up here also you have got coal hanging pretty steady at very high costs here on $1 per megawatt hour range. And down here across the country we have land-based wind and hydro. We're improving the site to make these better colors so you can distinguish them better. We've got a lot of blue right now, sorry. But land-based wind and hydro are some of the lowest cost technologies currently. Let's look at this in a different view. And you can see in the map, SLOPE has a map and a chart for almost every data set we have. And here in the map, we're mapping out what is the lowest cost technology. And we've got a time scale here. So in 2020, by county, hydro, which is this darker, well, medium blue, hydro is the lowest cost technology in our modeling in almost the entire country, right? So I pulled this for Ulster County, New York, where also hydro is the lowest cost technology. Some areas do not have good hydro potential, and this is assuming, a lot of assumptions have to be made here, and we try to add these all in the description. This is hydro from new stream reach development, so that's basically run-of-river small hydro development, as well as non-powered dams, so dams that already exist but don't have any generation associated with them. This is all based on new generation from those 2 types of hydropower, and that is the lowest cost technology in almost every county. So in New Mexico, we're missing some data a little bit here, but also in most counties in New Mexico, that's the case. But what if we shift this to 2050? What do we anticipate the lowest cost generation technology for new construction would be? And that you can see across the Midwest here becomes land-based wind in a lot of the country. We're seeing offshore wind become the lowest cost technology in these projections by 2050 up on the northeastern seaboard here, and then solar in some other areas of the country. Now, as a former solar developer, I can tell you that I think the solar is modeled at way too high a cost. So I think solar will be much lower cost than we're modeling here. But this is based on the the Regional Energy Deployment System, the REDS model. And so that is the model that we've been developing over 18 years at NREL, and it's got a lot of data in there that we're basing this on. Also, we've pulled out of that REDS model the projected capital cost of battery storage. Have to make a lot of assumptions here. And again, it's capital cost, but this is based on a 60 megawatt lithium ion 4-hour battery cost projection here. It's a smart axis, so this isn't going down to 0, but definitely cost decreases projected for battery storage. Okay, I'm going to shift to the state of New York quickly because it has a much more interesting story to tell on the offshore wind side of things than the state of New Mexico. So I think it's really interesting if you take a look at New York, that here in the chart, we're mapping out different technologies, right, in the state of New York. I've clicked off in the legend here, I've clicked off utility scale PV potential so that I can see a better scale on the other technologies. And in New York, actually, offshore wind potential is higher than land-based wind. That is because they have resource in both the Great Lakes and the Atlantic Ocean. So they don't have the highest offshore wind generation potential. We're seeing that in the Gulf states here, Florida, South Carolina, and Massachusetts. But they do have a higher generation potential. And we can see in this offshore wind generation potential, very high potential along the Great Lakes and Long Island here for New York. So this is just a way to understand sort of the upper boundary of your generation potential by technology, right? Okay, that gives you an intro to some of the features of the current slope beta. Basically, we've got phase one that is being implemented right now. And we're providing state and locally specific projection data integrated with the SLED platform so that I can show you in a bit. Still has the city level data there. Phase two will be implemented at the end of this calendar year, and we're working hard on it right now. We're going to be implementing, and I'll give you some more detail on this, transportation data. So your potential for fuel savings from on-road vehicle consumption, as well as where your vehicle registration may look like over time based on fuel type. And we're also looking to enable user-saved settings so you can save some of the time scale and geographic settings. You don't have to reset those anytime soon. But then we're also looking at setting up a user base and functionality so that we can eventually, we want to be able to allow you to replace some of our modeled data with your measured data and have more flexibility in the scenario planning that we're moving towards in phase three. So there we're looking at customized energy future scenarios to help you visualize how you might achieve your clean energy goal. And so coming at the end of this calendar year, as I said, we're going to be implementing transportation, current and projected on-road vehicle fuel consumption and vehicle miles traveled by county and state. And this is in different scenarios, right? We're looking at a reference sort of business as usual case, also looking at a high EV adoption case, and some version of probably a low vehicle miles traveled case, which might reflect higher carpooling, more ride sharing, perhaps more working from home. So we're looking at generating projections for multiple scenarios. Generation, we're also going to be implementing our reads output, which has modeled current and projected electricity generation mix by state. So here we're looking at that view for, I believe nationally, but we can also break it down by state. So this is looking at projected through 2050, what kinds of technologies you might see under different scenarios over time. We're implementing right now distributed generation wind and solar analysis, so rooftop PV and distributed wind technical generation potential to add to the utility scale that we currently have. We're also looking at adding levelized cost of electricity, so this is LCOE, to that chart from distributed wind and PV. Right now we have utility scale LCOE. So you can compare what type of generation and technology across more options there. We're doing some exciting new analysis on geothermal, where we're looking at the potential for geothermal district heating in new construction. And then we're also going to be delivering some existing data on the potential in existing buildings for geothermal district heating and geothermal heat pump economic potential across the country at a county level. We're going to be providing new stream reach and non-powered dam generation potential mapped out. So not only can you see that generation potential, but you can see where, and this is a screenshot of the data that's just been integrated without any kind of visualization applied to slope right now, but these are the new stream reach development sections of streams and rivers. So you can see where within your state and even county, there might be potential for water power development at that very low cost for modeling. We're also implementing city level data at the end of this calendar year for population, electricity, natural gas consumption, and commercial buildings. Again, the ability for users to save your individual settings and a redesign to be responsive to some of the feedback that we've gotten over the course of this first 6 months of implementation of slope. And we're building some use cases to help folks understand how they might apply the slope data to their own state and local cases. All right. I'm going to quickly run through some other data sets, and then I'll get to the slope platform and kind of run through it in real time so you can see how to manipulate it. So we don't on slope right now have greenhouse gas emissions as a metric. We're looking to implement that later. But for now, at the city level and the county level, you can pull up data on any city and county in the country based on these data sets. So these are state and local energy profiles, and they're on OpenEI. You've got the link right here. And this is mapped out by modeled electricity and natural gas consumption by sector. So we've got the residential, commercial, industrial sectors, and on-road vehicle fuel consumption from gasoline and diesel. So it's just an understanding that, okay, I've pulled this data for Kingston, New York as an example. Kingston, New York has much higher emissions from the transportation sector and those vehicle fuel consumption scenarios than it does from electricity and natural gas. So something to consider. And this is again modeled. So something to consider in their climate action planning. We also, as part of that suite of data sets, have commercial building inventories. And so this I pulled for the state of New Mexico, where we can see by commercial building type, the total built environment by area, and also the vintage, when those buildings were built. So in New Mexico, we have the vast majority of buildings here built before 1950. So that tells you something about efficiency and where you might have some opportunities for interventions there. Also want to quickly introduce you to the low income energy affordability data tool, the LEAD tool. Some of you may have used. It's a great tool to pair with slope and some of these other data sets to understand where the energy burden is across census tracts, counties, and states, as well as by income levels and housing types and tenure, renter versus owner occupied. So here in the state of New Mexico, I've just pulled by census tract where are the highest energy burdens, and it looks like the darker blue has a higher energy burden, and that is of course the percentage of annual income spent on utility bills essentially. So something to help plan to focus if you have an income qualified program, and to focus that geospatially. Here's a way to break it down by city, and this is pulled again from for the city of Kingston, New York. And we can see here with renter occupied, sorry, that's really small, versus owner occupied. This is the energy burden in the United States in blue, the state of New York in orange, and the city of Kingston, where we can see there's a much higher energy burden in the city than the state or the country, and that burden is highest among owner occupied households in the 0 to 30% of area median income range. However, there are a higher count of households in that 0 to 30% among renter occupied. So then you can split it down further by what types of housing those folks are living in. And so it's really helpful for focusing programmatic approaches to benefit low and moderate income populations. Okay, that's my quick introduction of slope and some various tools. I'm going to take you very quickly to the actual slope site so that we can see how it functions kind of in real time. And here we go. Hoping you can still see my screen here. This is the live slope site. And we will get to questions in just a minute, so I hope you're thinking of some good ones. All right, this is the slope beta site, soon to be new and improved with a new redesign and lots more data to help you with comprehensive clean energy planning. We're looking at a Coroplus map of the electricity and natural gas consumption across the country. So here we can see that combined consumption is higher in these states in the upper Midwest here, California, Texas. Let's click on the state of New Mexico and we can take a closer look. We already saw this. This is the breakdown of consumption by sector. We can switch to dollars spent and understand that, again, that those dollars spent kind of reflect how much is being consumed, but also they shift slightly, right? Industrial often has a lower rate for their energy consumption, so they might have fewer dollars spent as compared to their consumption than the commercial and residential sectors. We have data on population projections, and this is from the Landcast data from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So here we can look at state and by county, where might those populations be increasing, right? So here in New Mexico, we're looking at some of the, it often falls on the already populated areas, right? But across the state, this is where population might be increasing, or in this case, decreasing. It's not going to zero. This is a smart axis, but it's a very small county population-wise. We can see where folks, where people may be moving according to this model. All right, I'm gonna go back to state and pull this high achievable potential we saw, right? Let's go back to the state of New Mexico. So we took a look at that. The Coroplus map is always showing you comparative information, right? So New Mexico, and this is changing, but the legend's down here, darker is the higher savings potential, right? There's a total energy savings potential from efficiency mapped here and in the chart here. They're correlated. So New Mexico has lower total energy efficiency savings potential compared to other states, but still high among the commercial sector. Let's look at, again, this utility scale PV. So this is, again, technical generation potential. New Mexico has very high utility scale PV generation potential. We can look at that as a county level, right? So say I'm a state, I want to be deploying more utility scale PV. It looks like wind, New Mexico has pretty uniform, good generation potential across the counties within the state. And that's a useful way to distinguish where you might target generation. You can see we have at the county level these three technologies. We're hoping to expand that. This is concentrating solar. It's not so hot everywhere except for pretty detailed areas in the Southwest. And then if we switch back to state, we can look at things like, I'm going to do floating solar. And I did a study to look at the potential for generation in man-made water bodies across the US. And we found that if this potential was deployed, we could cover 10% of all energy generation or consumption or current generation as it stands. So in the state of New Mexico, here we're seeing all the different technologies, and floating solar is down here, so it's small, but New Mexico still has a very high potential as compared to other states, right? You're up there with Florida, which has tons of retention ponds that you can put solar on. This is agriculture and commercial retention ponds and detainment basins, etc. So just to show you how this works, I want to make sure you understand that this is a dynamic legend, right? I'm going to click off concentrating solar. It's very expensive. Utility scale PV is pretty dominant. And here we're still in New Mexico. Land-based wind is also a good potential, followed by floating solar. You have more floating solar generation potential than hydropower potential in the state of New Mexico. That's really interesting. Then from rooftop PV, biopower generation. This is not co-fired, exclusively biopowered fire facilities. And this is geothermal potential. Pretty small, but still existing in Mexico. All right. So again, that's pretty important, that clicking off capability for LCOE, right? Up here, we've got geothermal, which tends to be pretty expensive. So if you click that off, you can see a much better scale on the different technologies. And it's a smart scroll here so you can see those cost ranges. We've modeled the lowest to the median cost in projected and modeled data here. All right, and you've got all the links and the background and the methodology and models down here in the description. Again, this will change. We'll try to make it more commensurate with the actual charts and maps, but you can dig as deep as you want to find all the assumptions and models and more information down here in the description. Okay, that is a quick introduction to the SLOPE tool. I really hope it can be of use to you now and moving forward as we add more capabilities. We've got a couple of polls for you to hear how you might envision using this. And so I hope you'll respond to the polls while also entering your questions into the chat box. So I will turn it back over to our moderators here.
Great, thanks so much, Megan. That was terrific. It's a great tool, and we've got a ton of questions. And I'm not sure we'll get to all of them, but we'll do our best. But before we do, let's launch poll number 1. Great. So, what data sets on the Slope Beta platform do you think may be most useful to you? And you've got a few different selections: electricity and natural gas consumption, dollars spent, levelized cost of energy projections, projected commercial buildings count, square feet, renewable energy technical generation potential, or energy efficiency potential. If you could select one of those. Excellent. And Samantha, when you're ready, you think we've got a critical mass, we can show the poll results. So if you haven't clicked one of those responses, please do so now. Okay. Yeah, it looks like renewable energy technical generation potential is the leading response, followed by energy efficiency potential, followed by levelized cost of energy projections. Great, thanks. This is helpful feedbacks. And let's do our second poll as well. How do you envision using SLOPE? One of 5 answers: state energy planning, county level energy planning, city level energy planning, multi-jurisdictional research or analysis, or unknown as of yet. Please select one of those answers. And again, this is helpful feedback, both for us, but particularly for NREL. And Samantha, if you could show the results once we have a critical mass. Okay, multi-jurisdictional research or analysis is the leading response. Megan, do you have any comments on these before we move along to questions?
That is fascinating, because this is obviously a state-skewed audience, but that is the highest response we've gotten across the board is multi-jurisdictional. So it sounds like I'm hearing that folks are really interested in looking at sort of comparative planning across the jurisdictions, at least within your state, or perhaps regional planning, et cetera. So thank you for that feedback. It's really helpful.
Great, and we'll move into questions, and I'll go through as many as I can. And if there's additional follow-up, I'm sure Megan would be happy to connect with you offline. But the first question: do the savings potential calculations account for any non-energy benefits or costs like health, equity, social costs of carbon, etc.?
Good question. We have to. Okay, savings potential well, we've mapped energy efficiency savings potential. So that is pretty strict based on the technology and the savings that could be achieved by those various measures. So the levelized cost of energy is basically just a straight, and LCOE is a pretty problematic metric, right? Because it doesn't include things like the cost to it doesn't include a lot of the nuance. So you're not going to see the value to, say, a commercial operation of putting the solar on the rooftop versus, say, a purchase on the grid, because it's sort of commensurate with wholesale market prices, right? So no is the short answer to your question. We try to stay pretty neutral, and we don't inject those other considerations. Now, we do include RPSs in our models for state costs, level costs of energy, and certainly deployment potential. And there are other considerations in there. In the LCOE, we have operation and maintenance costs, and we have capital costs, of course, and the like. So short answer, no, but there is a lot that goes into these models that captures some other nuances.
Great, thank you. Next question, how far down in granularity, both geographic but also sort of sectorally, does the tool go? Could the tool drill down to differentiate public commercial versus privately owned commercial building stock, for example?
We've tried to get at that, right? So, and we've found that the data is not helpful and doesn't really allow us to get a good, accurate approximation of city operations or county operations or state sort of buildings. Because we do have a public building sort of category, but it includes schools, county, city, federal, state buildings, national forest, like buildings. So we aren't able to parse out from that broad public category what I think you're looking for, which is how do we tackle operations, reductions, and efficiency and renewable, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Next question. Really a two-part question. For renewables generation potential, do you also layer in any siting restrictions, and sort of a follow-up, does the potential assessment consider transmission availability?
It does have some consideration for transmission availability. So, but it's not limited exclusively to that, right? So it does include things like, okay, if you have a wetlands wildlife sanctuary or something, we've taken a lot of those layers of data and geospatial constraints into the consideration, but with less so on the transmission side, assuming that you could add new transmission to capture those resources across that geospatial area where you could actually develop the technology.
Great, thanks. Does the tool look at energy efficiency in new buildings? Is there any way to parse that kind of building stock, existing versus new buildings?
Right now, Slope does not have data that could really be parsed out in that way. As you can see, that you can parse out sort of commercial buildings that are newer of the existing building stock, and we are delivering new analysis at the end of this calendar year that shows the potential for district heating in new construction, because it's so much more efficient and cost effective to integrate it within construction rather than retrofit existing buildings. So yes, on those fronts, but otherwise, we have a lot of tools and resources on the building side of things to help understand how to build for net zero in new construction. Slope just isn't quite the platform that's delivering that right now, and I can take that offline and show you some of those other resources.
Thanks, Megan. How often does the levelized cost of energy data get updated?
Good question. We are going to be, actually, this last week, we had the data updated. Not on slope. We just got the raw data was delivered from the annual technology baseline and the model, the REEDS model. And so what we're going to be doing is delivering that new updated data annually, because it's being updated through the REEDS model and the ATB data anyway. So we're pulling that data in. We've got a script to pull it into the slope platform under consistent assumptions and parameters. And so that will be updated annually, and that data will be implemented at the end of this year, if not before.
Great, thanks. And then a couple questions on rooftop PV. But I think you said that that functionality is coming, and so questions about when it'll come and whether county resolution for rooftop PV potential will become available, and also parking lot PV potential.
Good question. Okay, so right now we're delivering rooftop PV potential at the state level based on some research that we've done in the past at NREL. We're implementing, and I'm really excited about this because it's based on parcel data. So we have a new data set that has parcel data across the country, so we understand both the building sort of footprint as well as the land area. So we're using that for both rooftop PV potential, and we're using that for distributed wind potential sort of on properties where there are no buildings. And we are going to be focusing on rooftop PV because we don't want to muddy the waters in terms of expanding that number dramatically by also including parking lot area. So, but with that parcel data, we may be able to eventually get there as a separate number of sort of parking area, carport applications as a separate estimate of generation potential, but we don't have that in the works in the near term.
Great, thanks. Would you consider adding other heating and transportation fuels such as oil, propane, wood, kerosene, and gasoline in terms of consumption, or is that in the works?
We would love to integrate that, and we've been searching sort of for really good data. One of the ways that you can access that data is the LEAD tool. They have it split out by heating fuel type. So you can look at energy burden and by fuel type and across census tracts and counties. So it's a good way to access more detailed data than we have on slope currently. So yes, we'd like to include that because obviously there's heating oil and there's propane that are major heating sources in areas of the country that we don't capture sufficiently right now with slope. So we're hoping to add that, but it's not there now.
Great, thanks. A couple questions on sort of accessing data and format. Can you easily access the data behind the charts in a table format? And is it possible to show state-by-state comparisons in the national map for various levelized cost of energy by technology scenarios?
Well, if you want to give me control again, I can show you. But each of those data sets is downloadable. So on the layer database, there's a little eye. There we go, thank you. So you're looking at LCOE, right?
Yep.
If you hit this, oh, sorry, no, I is for the information, the description of the data and links to all the sources. This is the download button on the far right here. And you'll get a download of the entire data set for every county or state, depending on which view you're in, right? So you could create your own comparison in any which way you'd like with this pretty robust data set. Everything we have on here is downloadable with this function here. So it's taking me a little while to open this large data set, but as you can see, there's a lot of data here, right? And just keep looking to the right. we've got the actual county here, the name of the county, and then we have all of the different LCOE data points for each year projected over time. So you can mess around with that data a lot. And I hope that answers your question. All of it is downloadable.
Wow. There's a lot there. To what extent do any of the models capture utility planning? Is there any model that captures integrated resource planning, for example? Is that information integrated into the modeling?
What we have is in the LCOE and the REEDS model. REEDS is updated every year, and they incorporate state-level renewable portfolio standards and, California's energy goals that are legislated, for example. So those are all integrated into the REEDS model and will be reflected to some extent, I think, in the levelized cost of energy as demand increases. But also the REEDS is really a capacity expansion model, so that we're looking to integrate that data soon, where what is your generation mix going to look like over time? That's where it's really important to integrate not just the IRPs, but the sort of the state level statutory requirements for clean energy. It does not get down to the IRP level because there's no, I would love to have that data, but it's basically a matter of reading every single IRP and the more than 3,000 different utilities we have in the country and capturing that data from like text and PDFs. So we don't have that level of detail at this point. We got to get some intern slave labor to get that done.
A couple of questions on places where it looks like there's data vacuums, perhaps. Somebody noted Vermont on the efficiency slide. Somebody noted that some Hawaii data might be missing, and somebody else noted Alaska looks like a data desert. Do you have any comments on those polls?
Yes, that's a good question. The REEDS Regional Energy Deployment System model has only the 48 contiguous states because it is a capacity expansion model, and Alaska and Hawaii are basically islands that aren't connected to the rest of the country's grid. So it doesn't model Alaska and Hawaii for that reason. However, we do have data modeled for consumption and dollars spent in Hawaii and Alaska, as you can see. So we can get down to the county level there, which is basically each island is kind of its own county in Hawaii and in Alaska. There's some data missing there because the data availability is really limited in Alaska. We do have some of it modeled out. And we have generation potential pools, and that's coming from REED. So that's also the lower 48, contiguous 48. So a lot of this is based on the models that are the most robust. And but population, we do have some, I believe. Beyond, I thought we had Hawaii for population. Nope. But we have it for consumption. So that's why we don't have it for every state.
Thanks. Great. Well, we're getting very, very close, but there's still a lot of questions. So maybe I'll shoot one more at you, and then I'll give you a chance, Megan, to have any sort of closing remarks before we tell you about some upcoming webinars we want to let you know about. So the last question. Daytime charging of EVs will help utilities reduce the need for some batteries in high penetration solar futures. Does the model look at value stacking and those kinds of strategies? Is there any way to do that?
Good point. Basically, the direction that a lot of things are going in NREL is down to the hourly incremental sort of load modeling. And so what we're trying to do is keep slope really user-friendly, no barrier to entry, and offload folks who want to go to those more detailed models to these other data sets. So you can actually request reads and use it yourself if you'd like to have a much more detailed analysis of system capacity expansion and LCOE, which is the feeder stock data, et cetera. We've also got the, for example, EVI Pro Lite is a newly available tool, and we're looking at EV charging hourly load profiles based on different kinds of adoption rates and the associated electric vehicle service equipment that would be needed to support different levels of EV adoption in a sort of regional approach. So I think there are a lot of ways you can get to value stacking through some more detailed analyses. And what we're trying to do is just link to all of those. So you can off ramp from slope to get more detail and more hourly sort of refinement of your modeling.
Great.
Okay, to summarize.
Well, we are at time, and before, well, I want to first thank you. This is an amazing tool and a great presentation, and really appreciate it. I also want to thank the audience for great questions. Unfortunately, couldn't get to all of them, but I'm sure there'll be opportunities to follow up, and I know Megan would appreciate your comments, feedback, and your questions too. So, but before signing off, Megan, do you have any parting shots you want to say about the tool?
I do hope that folks will give us feedback. There's a feedback tab on the SLOPE site. There's also slope@nrel.gov to send your emails about the site with feedback or questions. You can also contact me at megan.day@nrel.gov. Love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you so much. And I just want to let folks know about some upcoming CESA webinars. There's my contact information. You can also see some of our upcoming webinars, State Leadership in Low and Moderate Income Solar Energy, featuring Massachusetts, Michigan, and Oregon on July 23rd. New Jersey's plan for achieving 100% carbon neutral electricity, that's on Wednesday, July 29th. And expanding grid capacity with energy storage in Iowa, that's on July 30th. And NYSERDA's Offshore Wind program, that's on August 4th. So upcoming attractions, and we hope you'll tune in for those. All right, with that, over to you, Sam, for our closeout.
Thanks, Nate. I think you've pretty much covered it. I do want to tell people these are just the webinars that fit on the screen. So there's a bunch more coming up this summer. If you visit our website, cesa.org/webinars, you will be able to see a full list of what we've got coming up. And as we mentioned at the beginning, this webinar has been recorded, and we will have it up on our website soon. And we'll also be sending you a link to the recording. And I'll put the contact info up on our screen now. I'll close out the webinar, and thank you, Nate. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everybody who attended. We hope to see you at the next webinar.